Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. The Vegas Wolves roll on 4-0, and this time with TSJ sitting out, it was Rob Dillingham who put up a big scoring night and drove the Wolves offense. We'll break down what happened in Game 4 of Summer League next.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Happy Thursday, everybody. The Timberwolves are 4-0 in Las Vegas. And today we're going to talk all about mostly Rob Dillingham and Leonard Miller, how they really drove this win for Minnesota, and some other positives from this, and what can we expect as Summer League winds down and we look ahead to, I guess the Summer League playoffs, quite possibly. We'll talk about that on the show today, and we'll take a look at what's upcoming this offseason for the Wolves too. First of all, a big thank you off the top for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere, no matter where you like to listen to podcasts. You can find this show. You can also watch on YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms, and also on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. All right, so the Timberwolves are now 4-0 in Vegas. And real quickly, let's get this out of the way. That's it in terms of their scheduled games. They'll have at least one more game. The way this works is they take every team in Vegas, so I think it's like 26 teams. The teams that are 4-0, the best four teams in terms of point differential, because there's going to be at least four teams that are 4-0, will get to play in the quote-unquote playoffs. There will be a semifinal round on Saturday and then the championship game on Sunday. The Timberwolves are 4-0, but there's also three other teams that are currently 4-0, two other teams that are currently 4-0. So they're one of three teams that's 4-0. They have the worst point differential of the three. And there's five other teams that are 3-0. Two of those five already have better point differentials than the Wolves do, and by a significant margin. So if both the Raptors and Spurs, who have huge point differentials, win on Thursday, then the Wolves would not actually be in the playoffs. And there's still a chance that the Hawks, Clippers, Hornets could all surpass the Wolves, depending if they win, by blowout margin. So I would say it's more likely than not the Wolves are not actually in the playoffs, despite being 4-0, which means they would have a consolation game, I believe, on Saturday. If they do not advance. If they do advance, they'll have a semifinal Saturday and the championship game on Sunday. So all that to say, we will keep an eye on it. We should know by tomorrow's show what the Wolves' next step is in Summer League. But for those that care about such things, and I guess really it would determine if the Wolves have one or two more games. So we will keep an eye on it. But what really matters is individual player performances to this point in Summer League. And we spent a lot of time talking about Terrence Shannon Jr. That was a big part of yesterday's show because he's been fantastic. He scored 20 plus in all three games he's played in. He did not play on Wednesday. He was sat for a rest. It was the second day of a back-to-back, which is, back-to-backs in Summer League, whatever, they got to do it. But understandably, the Timberwolves chose to rest TSJ for this game. So it was the Wolves versus the Suns with no Terrence Shannon Jr. And that meant the offense had to be driven by Rob Dillingham, and it was. Rob Dillingham had his best game of the summer, and I don't think it's been particularly close. Like, this was clearly his best performance. And I would argue, we'll get into his line and everything he did, but I would argue it was even more obvious how important his performance was by the minutes when he wasn't on the floor. And honestly, I didn't look at the box score till after the game. And I just watching the game, I put in my notes hey, this offense is lost with Dillingham not on the floor. Without a point guard, this is rough. Amari Bailey's not a point guard. Jaylen Clark's not a point guard. Tristen Newton's not a pure point guard. Rob Dillingham, despite having a shoot-first mentality and being really more of a combo guard in terms of how he functions, is a point guard, especially compared to those guys. And then if you look at the box score post, a lot of the time, and if you're a regular listener to the show, I during the season, probably every other game, I'm talking about how I don't love individual games, single player plus minus, because it's so noisy in the box score. There's so much stuff going on. And there are times where it's not accurate. It doesn't tell you who played well and who doesn't. You can't just trust it. But in this case, it verifies it validates the point that I'm making. Rob Dillingham was a plus 17. Amari Bailey was a minus 16 in this game. Tristen Newton, actually, I guess, was a plus 18. Jaylen Clark was a plus 19, but those guys also played alongside Dillingham. When Dillingham wasn't on the floor, there was some Bailey playing point guard. Jamal Cain, by the way, who I like, and I was excited to watch. He was also a minus 19 in this game. He shared the floor with Amari Bailey in the backcourt a fair amount with Dillingham on the bench. And Dillingham was legitimately good in this game. Remember, after the loss, or excuse me, after the win on Tuesday, so on yesterday's show, we talked about how Dillingham scored 16 points on 17 shots and didn't even attempt a three-pointer, which is just bonkers. In this game, it was his most efficient game, still a high volume scoring game, 23 points on 20 shots, but he was 1 of 6 on threes. He was 8 of 14 on twos, got to the line for 4 free throws and made them all. We can live with that. This line is exactly what you'd expect from Rob Dillingham in 31 minutes. 23 points on 20 shots, 7 assists, only 2 turnovers, and 7 boards, which is a good number for him, obviously. And he got to the line 4 times, which is good. The thing we talked about on yesterday's show, I kind of harped on like what to expect from Dillingham right now based on his track record, albeit very short track record, is high volume scoring, not getting to the line a ton, a lot of turnovers, and, effort on defense, but not true impact, not a true positive impact on defense. And that was mostly still true here, but the 7 boards are great. The 7 assists, 2 turnovers are great. And he did get to the line 4 times on 20 shots, which again, for him, 4 times on 14 2-point attempts, if you want to say it that way. All really good. And again, the non-Dillingham minutes underscore just how much more dynamic he is than anybody else in the backcourt of this Summer League team. And obviously Jaylen Clark's great, but in terms of the offense, and we'll talk about him, he played really well. But in terms of the offense, Rob Dillingham is the engine of a Terrence Shannon Jr.-less Timberwolves Summer League team. Like, he has to be. And when Rob Dillingham's on the floor, that is the role, right? He has to be the engine that drives it. And in a perfect world, when he shares the floor with Anthony Edwards next year, presumably Mike Conley is still the starter at the beginning of the year, at least, and Dillingham's coming off the bench. Dillingham has to be that second creator next to Anthony Edwards. That's the whole thing that, bogs down in the playoffs when teams straight up just load up on Anthony Edwards. And in the case of, say, the conference finals against OKC, they had the bodies, they had the size, the talent, the ability to match up with Julius Randle and make his life difficult. You need another guy. You need somebody else in the backcourt who's going to handle the ball. And I know Randle basically initiated offense for large swaths of last season. He played as a point forward, in part due to out of necessity because they didn't have a true backup point guard. But they need another creator, a secondary option in the backcourt next to Anthony Edwards, setting aside Julius Randle. And what Rob Dillingham did in this game proves that, hey, if he shares the court for 12 minutes a game with Anthony Edwards next year, whatever, do you run the offense through Dillingham and Ant gets to play off the ball? Because a lot of the time when the starting lineup is on the floor, Anthony Edwards is actually running the offense. Mike Conley might take the ball up the floor, but he gets it to Ant, and Ant is running the offense, and Conley is playing off the ball as a catch and shoot threat, which is great, except for that teams don't worry about him putting the ball on the floor at all. And so it's limited. With Rob Dillingham, if he's initiating the offense and Ant is getting to play off the ball, that's huge. And if you do want to flip it and Dillingham plays off the ball, he's more dynamic offensively, obviously, than Mike Conley. But at this stage, this version of Rob Dillingham, this 20-year-old version is, hey, high turnover, like teams will still pick their poison and make Rob Dillingham beat them. He has to prove that he can. But that's the idea behind Rob Dillingham in the first place, is why the Wolves traded up to draft him last summer. Is he's dynamic and can play on or off the ball, just like Anthony Edwards could play on or off the ball. So you can kind of, play that both ways. You can invert it, whenever you want, and have one of those guys initiate and the other play off the ball. And Mike Conley's lost that dynamism to his game. But obviously some of the drawbacks for Dillingham were too much last year to play him consistently with Anthony Edwards. But all that to say, this performance in the Summer League, 23 points on 20 shots, 7 assists, only 3 turnovers, getting to the line 4 times. That is super encouraging and exactly what the Timberwolves need to see if they're going to play him alongside Anthony Edwards for any length of time next year. I want to talk about Jaylen Clark and Leonard Miller. They both played great. We'll talk about some of the other key names on the Summer League roster here before we peek ahead. We'll do all of that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at OpenPhone. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had an urgent need, maybe for a plumber or a service provider. If the first person didn't answer, did you wait? Probably not. You moved on, and that's why you need OpenPhone. OpenPhone is the #1 business phone system built to streamline and scale your customer communications, all from an app on your phone or your computer. OpenPhone lets you manage business calls and texts from a single app, which is super convenient. The shared inbox feature is a game changer. Your team can jump into any conversation instantly without missing a beat. And their AI agent handles after-hours calls, answers common questions, and captures leads so that you never miss a customer. OpenPhone is offering my listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That's OpenPhone, OpenPhone.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. Reminder, it hit me during the middle of that. If you're not a regular watcher on YouTube, the lighting is weird. I'm in an alternate location. This is day 2 of the alternate location. We'll be back to the normal studio here by next week. But apologies for the shadows, the lighting. I did what I could. If you're listening on audio, you're none the wiser. Should sound exactly the same as usual. All right. Continuing on, talking Summer League. Rob Dillingham was great. Let's talk Leonard Miller. I guess he's the next natural conversation. And I spent some time yesterday on Wednesday's show talking about Miller. And I mean, he's turned in 3 of 4 pretty strong Summer League performances. We talked about how Terrence Shannon Jr. scored 20 plus in all 3 games. Leonard Miller's been at 20 plus in 3 of 4 games. And I'll repeat a little bit of what I said yesterday, because I don't want to detract from what Leonard Miller has done. But he should be succeeding here, right? He played in the G League for a year. He spent 2 years up and down with the Wolves and their G League affiliates. This is in Summer League is very close to G League basketball. And so he's played well. That's what is to be expected. I do think it's fair to say that this performance was his best performance. It felt like his most sustainable performance. I think the activity level on the glass was great. A bit handsy defensively, but I think at least he was applying himself defensively, which is great. 22 points on 8 of 16 shooting and 11 boards in this game, including 3 offensive rebounds. He was 8 of 11 on 2-point shots. He was aggressive in the open floor, which is what we want to see. And if you missed it, what I talked about on yesterday's show was a lot of what he's done in Summer League is stuff that isn't necessarily transferable to regular season NBA basketball, right? It's ripping boards and going coast to coast, which you can do. Yes, you can do it, but it's not a sustainable method of scoring 20 a game, right? There's a lot of that, some putback stuff, some scoring in transition that isn't always going to be open in the regular season. But this game was a good mix of those things. And he didn't even make a 3. He was 0 for 5 on 3s. But again, 8 of 11 on 2s, got to the line 7 times and made 6 free throws. I thought that the overall half-court activity level and the decision-making was solid for Leonard Miller. 2 assists, only 2 turnovers. He did commit 6 fouls. He had 1 steal, 1 block. Just kind of a stat-stuffing performance. Outside of not making a 3, this was easily his best performance of the summer, and I felt encouraged by it. I still don't buy him as a 11th man. He's not Luka Garza. He's not he's kind of in some ways the opposite of Luka Garza in that potential role, right? Luka Garza, you knew exactly what you're going to get. You're going to get good offense, really good offense, activity on the boards, generally poor defense, good effort. The one thing you weren't sure about would be, is he going to make 3s today or not? Because he was pretty streaky when it came to his 3-point shot in, albeit, limited, inconsistent minutes. But you mostly knew what you were going to get. Leonard Miller is much more volatile in what he's going to provide you. And so Chris Finch isn't going to be like, all right, Lenny, you have the Garza role. You're our 11th man. And if, we're playing a back-to-back and Rudy's banged up and then Nas is in foul trouble, you're going to give us 12, 14 minutes. That's not going to be an automatic for Leonard Miller this year, because we don't know exactly what we're going to get from him on a night-to-night basis. But he's been mostly consistent in Summer League. 3 of 4 games, he scored 20 plus. I think the activity level on the glass has been good. I think the defense has been better than it has been the last couple of years in the G League and in Summer League. And, he's been really good at transition, which is what they need him to do. He had one really nice steal and then headman pass in the open floor. It wasn't like a complicated play, but it was the sort of thing that he didn't overthink it, right? He didn't try and do something crazy. He just jumped in front, got the steal, chucked a pass down the court for a layup or a dunk, whoever it was. But I think overall encouraging. Like, you can't ask him to do much more. And what I had said after yesterday, or on yesterday's show after Tuesday's game, was that I thought it would be important to see if he could play make at all for others and see if he could score in the half court. And he did just a little bit of both of those things. And there's obviously a little more space on the court, a little more basketball to go around with Terrence Shannon Jr. But again, a lot of what Leonard Miller does, he's got to create his own activity. He's got to create his own chances with his activity is probably a better way to say that. And I think he mostly did that in this game. So I thought it was encouraging. I still do not buy him as a rotation player right now. I don't think Chris Finch buys him as a rotation player, understanding that the ceiling is still higher. If some of this stuff clicks with regularity for Leonard Miller, there's a lot of potential there. There's a lot of potential. Jaylen Clark was very good in this game. 13 points on 4 of 9 shooting, 3 of 6 on threes, which is super nice to see after struggling to this point in summer league. He was 2 of 6 last game from 3. He was 2 of 6 the game before that, and he was 0 of 5 in game 1. So I say struggling. It wasn't like horrible, but nice to see a 3 of 6 from him. Got to the line 4 times. He had 5 steals in this game in 32 minutes. He played a team high 32 minutes. 5 steals, 2 rebounds, a little low for him in that amount of playing time. 3 assists to 2 turnovers. And again, 13 points on 9 shots. And for what it's worth, had the team's best plus minus at a plus 19, which is largely driven by what he was able to do on the perimeter defensively. There's nothing about Jaylen Clark's summer league that changes my opinion of him. He's a top flight point of attack defender. He is a solid shooter with the potential to be better than that. If he wants to prove me wrong, again, he shot 43% last year in limited volume from deep at the NBA level. There's not much offensive game beyond the open 3-point shot, but that's all they really need from him. So if he can continue to shoot threes at somewhere near 40% and play point of attack defense the way he does, he's going to be in the mix for the 9th to 10th rotation spots along with Dillingham and Shannon. I think that's a perfectly reasonable spot for him to be in the rotation, and he can make a case for it. He's that good defensively. I mean, again, summer league, but still 5 steals in 32 minutes is outstanding. And to this point, I mean, like, now he's close to 40% for summer league after this performance. He's probably like 35, 36-ish% ballparking it based on the lines I just rattled off. But really nice performance once again from Jaylen Clark. Let's talk about Joan Beringer. Beringer, another quieter game and another game where there's some foul trouble. Remember, first 2 games, I say foul trouble. In summer league, you get 10 fouls, which is a good thing because Beringer had 7 fouls in each of the last 2 games. After in the first 2 games, game 1, I think he only had 1. Game 1, he had 2 personal fouls. Game 2, he had 2 personal fouls. And then in each of the last 2 games, he's had 7. Last game, 3 points, 6 boards, 2 blocks. This game, he had 6 points, 5 boards, 1 block in 27 minutes. You'd like to see a little more activity on the defensive glass, which is exactly what I said after the first 2 games. I was very impressed with his nose for the basketball, his activity level on the defensive glass. And now we see this game, which is the other side of it. It's exactly why I was keeping an eye out for it. Beringer takes on this Phoenix Suns team, plays 27 minutes, and only gets 1 defensive rebound as the center. That obviously can't happen. That's a function of, I don't think it's effort or activity level, and I don't think it's a lack of instinct. He's just not that big of a guy yet. He's lanky, right? Like he's 18 years old. There's a lot to happen there in terms of physicality or in terms of building out his strength, his frame, etc. And as good as that was, or as good as the instincts played early, what was it? 8 boards in 23 minutes in his debut, 7 boards in 21 minutes the next time out. Last time, 6 boards in 21 minutes. And this time only 5, and only 1 of them on the defensive glass. So that's going to have to improve. But again, I think it's more his frame, his build, his strength has not been part of an NBA strength and conditioning regimen, and it's more strength than it is conditioning. He also jacked a couple of long 2s in this game. One was toward the end of the shot clock. The other was unnecessary. So not something that's been an issue in the first 3 games. I guess he was just like in screw it mode for, I don't know what the deal was, but not something he should necessarily be doing yet. So 6 points on 7 shots and only one defensive board in 27 minutes. Not the finest hour for Beranger, but obviously, again, 18-year-old has been really good to this point. And I thought he still had a good impact defensively. He was, again, I'll cite plus minus again. Well, we're at it. Plus 15 in this game. Like overall, really good defensively. And there's just polish that needs to happen on offense. I want to talk about some of the other guys, the guys vying for two-way or end of the roster spots, and we'll peek ahead. We'll do all that here next to close out the show. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our title sponsors at Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can't. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. When I started using Monarch Money, the surprising thing for me, maybe it wasn't all that surprising, but to see it in one place is always a bit jarring, is takeout. It's food delivery. It's just really restaurants in general. I spend a bit more there than probably I should. Maybe for you, it's subscriptions. You don't watch all your streaming services. You kind of think about it all and you put it all in one bucket. And it's like, oh, wait a minute. I probably don't need to spend that much. The other thing that's great is to have everything in one app makes it so much easier to just manage your money day to day instead of using multiple apps and all that stuff. Right now, take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. All right. So coming into Summer League, the guys that I wanted to keep an eye out for in regards to the end of the roster, remember, Minnesota has 2 roster spots to fill. They must fill one of them before training camp. And they also have a 2-way spot to fill. They've signed rookie Rocco Zakarski and brought back Jesse Edwards. They reportedly had extended the qualifying offer to Tristen Newton, who is their third 2-way guy last year, but he has not yet accepted. And we talked on Monday with Andrew Dukowitz's own coverage. He's probably angling for a guaranteed contract from somebody, or at least holding out to hope that he gets one. And the fact that he hasn't signed, and like say Jesse Edwards has, probably means his agent has heard chatter that there's teams that could be interested in giving him a guaranteed deal. It's probably not Minnesota, because if it was, they probably would have done it by now. And I'm on the record with Tristen Newton. I think he's fine. I think there's upside there, but he doesn't really pop for me when I watch him play. All that to say, the guys that I said to look at, keep an eye out for potentially the third 2-way or maybe even a fully guaranteed roster spot were Amari Bailey out of UCLA, who played college with Jaylen Clark and was a second-round pick of the Hornets just last year. And then also Jamal Cain, who was on the roster for the Heat in the NBA Finals a few years ago and has bounced around a little bit since then. Saw some starts, some rotation minutes with Pelicans, and there was one other team he played for mixed in there. Neither of those guys played great in this game. Amari Bailey, actually, this was easily his worst game. It was also his only start. He was given the opportunity to play a little bit of point guard when Dillingham was off the floor, and it did not go well. He had 7 turnovers to 5 assists in this game, shot 4 of 10. The 3-point shot doesn't look super comfortable, and that was one of the things I was concerned about. The scouting report on him coming out of UCLA was an inconsistent outside shot, not a great playmaker for somebody who's 6'4" with a 6'7" wingspan. If you're not a great shooter and not a great playmaker, it's tough. I mean, he's really good at basically everything else. Good first step, tough, hard-nosed, gets to the paint, gets to the rim, scores in the paint, can get to the free throw line, all that stuff. But you kind of got to have one of those other skills. You've either got to be a really good passer or a average or better shooter. And it seems like he's an average to slightly below average streaky shooter from outside and isn't really playmaking for others with consistency. Now, a couple games ago, Tuesday, we saw a really, nice backdoor pass to Rob Dillingham. Like, we've seen some of those things sprinkled in, but it hasn't been with consistency. And in this game, he just didn't look comfortable running the offense. And, I don't think he's a point guard. One game isn't going to make me say, hey, they shouldn't look at Amari Bailey. But this is exactly why he's in this position and not still on the Hornets roster or, with some other team on a 2-way yet. But I bet somebody signs him to a 2-way. If it's Minnesota or somebody else, there's enough upside there because of the defensive ability and his length, the ability to get to the rim, get to the free throw line. there's something there. And I wouldn't mind it if Minnesota signed him. I like him more than I like Tristen Newton, who I should point out, to be fair, Tristen Newton had his best game of summer league on Wednesday, and it wasn't close. He had 9 points on 3 shots. He got to the line 6 times, made all his free throws, had 3 assists, 5 boards in this game, and also 3 stocks, 2 steals and a block. So a solid Tristen Newton game that underscores like, hey, that there's some two-way-ness here with Tristen Newton. He's a pretty good defender. There's something to like here, and I think there's a little bit more current offensive ability, not necessarily upside. I don't know that he has that much more upside. He's a little more pure offensively, a little more smooth offensively than Amari Bailey. I still like Amari Bailey overall a little bit more than Tristen Newton, but Newton was good in this game. Jamal Cain was just fine. He missed a layup at one point on a nice delivery. He did knock down a corner 3. He had 3 points on 3 shots in 14 minutes and was a team worst minus 19 in this game. I still think he's an fringy NBA guy. I think he's like a really nice 11th man who could do a little bit of everything, but not great at any one thing. Not much to write home about in this game, but I like him just the same. I should mention, we talked about CJ Fulton yesterday on the heels of Andrew talking about him on Monday as somebody to look out for. He, sure enough, was only the 11th guy to see minutes in the Summer League for Minnesota. He played just under 4 minutes in the first half of this game. Only recorded a turnover, no other stats. Didn't really get an opportunity to do much else. It wasn't a great pass on his turnover. And his whole thing is lots of assists and no turnovers is what he did in small college basketball, small D1 basketball. So not much to say there. Rocco Zakarski continues to just kind of be there. 1 board in 7 minutes. Some good activity on offense. He always seems to be in the right spot around the rim, but combination of not great passes from the backcourt, and then also just not really finishing at this point with Zakarski. Like, it just hasn't looked great. It's looked a little clunky, which is to be expected. He's 18, right? First taste of pro basketball in the U.S., so not like terrifying or anything like that. Jesse Edwards, another kind of so-so game from him. He just doesn't ever really pop for me either. He had 6 fouls in 10 minutes, looked a bit kind of sluggish defensively. And I don't mean that in a lack of effort way. I just don't know that he's quick enough or smooth enough to do what he needs to do, what they're asking him to do defensively. So he continues to just kind of underwhelm a little bit on the defensive end of the floor for me, or on the offensive end of the floor. Actually, on both ends of the floor for me. I think that's all for this one. So again, next, we don't know when the Wolves will play next. It depends on how all the action shakes out today on Thursday. I think at this point, we know they're not going to play Friday. So their next game is going to be Saturday. Whether or not that's part of the semifinal or the consolation, we don't know yet. So they'll play Saturday. And if they are in the semifinals and then advance, then they would be in the championship on Sunday, in which case, of course, we'll talk about that on Monday's show. Like, either way, whatever happens this weekend, that'll be a Monday show thing. Tomorrow, we'll peek ahead at the rest of the offseason, what's upcoming for Minnesota. Any key takeaways at this point from Summer League that we can apply ahead, we'll do that on tomorrow's show. And again, whatever happens this weekend, we'll cover on Monday's show. That's all we got for you today. Big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. A reminder that for your second listen, you can find the Locked On NBA podcast where there is no offseason. Doug, Matt, and Hayes will keep you up to date on contract negotiations, rumors, and everything you need to be the most informed NBA fan. Find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Of course, the Locked On Wolves podcast is part of that very same Locked On Podcast Network, and we are the local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast. We'll catch you next time.